Matt Painter was available for his pre-Kentucky press conference yesterday. We've got the exhibition tonight. We'll have coverage of this on Monday. We'll do the recap, but we will be dialed into this for sure. In the meantime, we have answers. Matt Painter has officially announced his starting lineup. It is Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Renn, Oscar Clough, and drumroll please, CJ Cox is the fifth starter on this team. After months of speculation from certain sources that Jakari Harris was the player of the summer and had emerged as the favorite at the shooting guard spot, it turns out it is the incumbent. The CJ Cox shooting guard experiment continues after a strong finish to last season from Cox. He is back holding down the spot. Now, Painter had a couple things to say as he rolled this out. He continues to reiterate this team has more than five starter caliber players. He actually very pointedly, flatly said, this is tough for Jakari because it was one of his goals this summer to be a starter for this team. And look, things may change, but for game one, it's going to be CJ. So we have clarity on the position. As Brian Newbert put it yesterday, no surprises from Painter's press conference as CJ Cox was announced the starting shooting guard. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I know we don't get political on this show, but I feel like we were watching a presidential race go down this whole summer with who was going to win. I mean, we didn't know what would happen in the West Lafayette Electoral College and how those would be, I think balanced throughout. But at the end, I think, I would say that this came to the correct decision. I think that CJ Cox is the player that fits best next to those guys. I think that CJ Cox is also a player with, even though it's not the experience the other guys had, but this was a guy who played a lot of minutes and was productive last season. So I think everything kind of fits into, where I'm not surprised that CJ Cox is in the spot that he's in now. Going back to it, I thought that, you know, uh, I thought that Omer Meyer coming over would probably factor in a little bit differently, but then everything you heard kind of as how it played out during the summer, you kind of got to the point where you had to accept that it was going to be CJ or Jakari. And if it came down to that, I thought that, it would be CJ. So I guess I'm not shocked. I think that Jakari probably did do some things to make this a more difficult choice than maybe others thought. But I think at the end of the day, the right decision kind of came to.
Do we get to claim this as a win for Sleepers Media's situational analysis slash body language PhD over the last 2 months?
Um,
Because I do feel like you and I, in the middle of like competing sources on this, you and I were at least successfully able to sniff out the Jakari stuff was a little overblown and Myers trending in the wrong direction. We think it's going to be CJ. We've kind of held that for a month or so.
Yeah, I think for probably a month and a half we kind of just accepted. We're like, it's gonna be CJ. Like I get all this is coming out. It's good Jakari's playing well, but like it's gonna be CJ. So sure.
Minor win for our
Minor,
situational
minor,
analysis.
minor. A minor one that we will mention here. This is the minor one, then we're moving forward.
I was going to say that I've enjoyed watching I I think yesterday after this was announced there was a lot of like, oh, we're not surprised. After like I'm some sources earned the right to not be surprised, right? I think Bartley back in like 2 months ago was like it's gonna be Cox. And credit to him. He was the first person I think said that. I know Craig and the Boilers in the Stands guys have felt like it was CJ or trending towards CJ. So we're not the only people who I think were able to correctly assess where this was headed. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of funny. If you, even ourselves included in this based on what I just said. It's like the news drops and everyone wants to be like, ooh, we nailed it. We were right. Like it might change a week later, but for now we were all right. Do you think it's going to change? Or do you think CJ is going to do enough to hold this off all season?
I think given what I saw from CJ last year and what, assuming that, we hear everything about him getting better, I feel like he locks this down, to be honest with you.
What do you think it means between the two? Because here's what I would say. There's still speculation West might redshirt. I made my passionate pitch at the end of last week that I think if you're looking for a way to open the door slightly for Omer, it's redshirt Antoine.
Hmm.
I don't know how you're giving Antoine game by game minutes and also making sure Omer gets the minutes he needs. So Those two are kind of out of it for me. It felt like it really has been Cox versus Harris for the shooting guard spot. Like, does this definitively mean something about CJ as a player that Jakari can't match? Or do you think these two are nearly identicals and in terms of what they bring, and Paint just had to pick one? You can't start six players.
I personally just think that CJ has just I guess we can argue what the difference is, like how if it's large or marginal. I just think that CJ can do, even if he can do the same things as Jakari, I just think he does them better than Jakari. I also personally feel like CJ is someone that can get his own a little bit more, whereas Jakari is not necessarily that type.
Dion, you okay? You look a little sweaty.
So every August, September, my air conditioning breaks, and there's just nothing I can do about it.
Dude, that's tough. Out in California too? Like, I mean, what is it, like 80 degrees still there today?
Today's gonna be like 85, 90, but like peak summer, it gets like 110. My AC just doesn't ever hold up.
I mean, it sounds like it's a bummer that you can't take advantage of Duncan Mechanical Solutions because Duncan Mechanical Solutions is an HVAC company based in Angola, servicing the tri-state area, bringing commercial quality to the residential world with excellent customer service. You heard us talk about Duncan Mechanical last summer. If you need heating or air conditioning, kitchen or bath remodeling, or all of the above, Duncan Mechanical is the place to go in the Midwest. Go to duncanmechanicalsolutions.com to take advantage and make sure you don't wind up like Dion. Yeah. I mean, it's clearly all about fit between the others, but that's the interesting part to me. I think Harris arguably is the one that fits the best because he's more 3 and D to me, right? Cox kind of wants to like rock out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Rock out with your cocks out. He wants to like get the ball and do his little thing, do his little dancey dance, his
Do
Carson
do
Edwards.
now I'm picturing like CJ Cox is like he's at the little family, like basically like Braden and Fletcher and TKR and them are like the old heads at the barbecue, and CJ's like the little young cousin, like, hey, go out there and show your uncles your little dancey dance, and like CJ
Yeah.
Cox goes out there and does a little thing.
And he does a little thing. We're all like, oh, he's so cute. And then he goes back to the kids' table.
Yeah.
But that's on a serious note though, like I actually did kind of wrap my head around that in the summer with these conversations, right? Harris probably was the guy that fit it best. I think there was a reason it was kind of reported and documented that Harris was the early front runner. I think it's because on paper they felt he fit the best, and I mean they to mean the staff. So to me, I look, I kind of like to draw conclusions from things, even if there doesn't need to be one. My conclusion to this would be they do feel there's a little bit of separation between CJ and Jakari, and it's not to say Jakari isn't deserving, but to me, you're going with the guy who fits a little bit worse here, and you only do that if he's at minimum a little bit better. Now that doesn't surprise me at all, Cart, because anytime I've been able to actually put my eyes on Purdue basketball, CJ Cox has looked better than Jakari Harris.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, no, and that's why I find myself like it's not like some big drop, like oh my God, like out of nowhere. If it was somebody else, then it would kind of have that reaction. But I think this is Paint making the right choice.
Right. Yeah. So credit to Paint early. Yeah.
Credit to CJ Cox too, being a starter on this team is awesome.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, massive winner CJ Cox here, and the
So
Middlesex Magic program.
to that point, Paint was very blunt about it. Jakari, it was a goal of his to be a starter on this team. We had to name CJ the guy. That's the way Paint laid it out in this press conference. What do you think this decision means for Jakari? How's he going to handle it? And I don't know. Look, it's the era we're in. If a guy is running around me like I want to start and he's not starting, it's not hard to wonder what this means long term too. I mean, you would think Jakari steps into a huge role next season, even if he's a six man this year. He has a big role still, but like, how's he going to handle this mentally? Do you think it's going to matter?
I think that there's going to be a role for Jakari on this team. But I do think that he is a guy that could start for a lot of teams probably at some level, depending on who the team is, and um. I also think that, Jakari is probably looking forward a little bit to like, okay, once Fletcher and Braden are gone, then I'll finally maybe get my shot. But I do think that there's probably, inherently Purdue has this great culture and they retain players. Like that's what they do, right? But you also are always at risk for, when you do this, guys maybe getting somewhat fed up at a certain point. Not saying it's going to happen, but there's a world, there's a possibility where it could happen.
Here's what I would say, and I'm going to be watching this because I am a CJ Cox believer. I am not the biggest Jakari
Got,
Harris
can I
believer.
say one more thing though before you go?
Please, please.
The one thing I'll say is that even in a small sample size and stuff I'm hearing, I wouldn't be the most shocked in the world if Antoine West passes Jakari Harris by next year.
I still think they're going to redshirt Antoine, but next year, like big picture, sure. They like
I'm
Antoine
saying
a
next
lot.
year. I'm
Yeah, they
saying
like
next year
Antoine a
though.
lot. Here's what I will say, and this is what I'm going to be watching for Jakari now that we have turned the page and it's official. He's coming off the bench. Jakari just focused on him. Jakari needs to do everything he can to continue making this conversation CJ or Jakari and avoiding the conversation turning into Jakari or Omer. Because that like let's hierarchy this out a little bit. If CJ cements this, and it sounds like he has going into the year, if CJ just cements like there's no more competition, I'm CJ Cox at shooting guard. Now you talk about the guy who was in contention, 50-50 coin toss for that, now needing to hold off a guy that is on a quote unquote 2-year international plan. Like your role is kind of flipping from I'm competing for the starting spot to I'm competing to make sure Omer isn't taking my minutes. And I think, we're big Omer believers. That's going to be easier said than done. Early on, it doesn't feel like they want to give Omer many chances at the two. But I think if you're Jakari, if you're a believer in Jakari, he needs to continue to play at a level and embrace this to the point where we continue talking about him versus CJ. Because if the conversation flips into him versus Omer and it's not even a debate with CJ anymore, then I start to worry about where this heads a little bit.
Where do you think it heads though?
I mean, I believe Omer's going to get better and better and at a certain point demand some minutes.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I would tell you inherently like my personal belief levels in the players. I'm a big CJ Cox believer. I'm a big Omer Meyer believer. I just haven't been the biggest Jakari believer till I see a little more. So
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, actually, no, I don't even want to say that because I think it's speculating negativity for no reason.
good on you.
Yeah, there you go.
How much do these guys both score against Kentucky tonight? 4-3.
No, Jakari's gonna outscore and outplay CJ, and
Wow.
it's gonna do things.
And we're gonna get to keep talking about this every day,
Yeah,
but we won't be surprised.
some won't be surprised.
No surprises.